Welcome to Pimpy's Investment Chat, where we keep investment talk simple. And here's your host, Pimpy.
What is going on out there, peeps? Okay, in this video, I continue to explain a couple of things. One of the things I talk about is what happens to the Iraqi dinar if they unpeg from the US dollar. So let's continue and get into this right now. Okay, so another thing I picked up on that I was making a point about and Kyle was making a point about was the devaluing of the Iraqi currency. I said that a major contributor to that was when Iraq invaded Kuwait, their currencies were devalued. And then Kyle said inflation also played a big part of it, which he's right. This is what I'm talking about when we speak about the Iraqi dinar and the factors that contribute to this. Another thing he had mentioned was the amount of money that was printed in Iraq, which is what Saddam did, and it really drove down the value of the Iraqi dinar. So let's go over the exchange rates because I jotted some notes down here. We could talk about that. You know, there are many reasons for the current value of the Iraqi dinar that get overlooked. And Iraq has experienced multiple devaluations and revaluations of the currency. So I just wanted to bring up a handful of times that the value of the Iraqi dinar has changed. So I did a research on it from 1988 to currently where we are. These are the major events that affected the currency. In 1988, the IQD was introduced. And this was replacing the Iraqi pound, the IQP. And this was done at a fixed rate of 1-to-1. That was you could exchange your IQP, the Iraqi pound, straight across 1-for-1 for the Iraqi dinar, the IQD. In 1990, when Bush 1 went to war with Iraq, of course the Gulf War caused significant devaluation of the IQD. The currency losing about 80% of its value against the US dollar. You can exchange one Iraqi dinar for 31 cents US. Now the funny thing is, I'd take that right about now because I have about, 4 or 5 million Iraqi dinars. If it jumped up to 31 cents, woo, I'd be happy with that because I'd get over $1 million back. So in 1995, the IQD was officially pegged to the US dollar at a fixed rate of 1 Iraqi dinar for $2.85 US dollar. That was 1995. In 2003, we know that the US led an invasion of Iraq. And of course, that's because of what Iraq did to Kuwait. And this led to a period of economic instability and currency fluctuations. Then the Iraqi dinar was devalued to around 1 Iraqi dinar for $1.30 US dollar. In 1995, it went from $2.85 exchange rate down to $1.30 exchange rate. 2010, the Central Bank of Iraq introduced a new currency. These are the bills that we have today, the new Iraqi dinars. Got rid of the ones with the faces of Saddam Hussein to the dollars that we have now. When Iraq was exchanging their old currency with the new currency, there was an exchange rate of one new IQD was equivalent to 1,000 old IQDs. In 2012, the Central Bank of Iraq removed the currency peg to the US dollar and allowed the IQD to float freely. This led to significant devaluation of the currency, with the IQD losing about 20% of its value against the US dollar. 2014, the IQD experienced another devaluation. This time it was due to the decline in oil price and the conflict with ISIS. The currency lost about 15% of its value against the US dollar. In 2020, the CBI implemented a new exchange regime, allowing the IQD to float freely against a basket of currencies. This led to further devaluation of the currency, with the IQD losing another 10% of its value against the US dollar. And then we know, I think it was not even a year later, to turn around and revalued it and increased the value of the Iraqi dinar's exchange rate. Because when we speak about the Iraqi exchange rate, what happened to it over time, there's a lot of mixed stories out there. So this should help clarify a lot of things about what happened to the Iraqi dinar, at least since 1988. So yeah, at one time, the Iraqi dinar was more valuable than the US dollar. Do I think it can get there again? Of course I believe that, absolutely. But there are hurdles that Iraq has to get over, and we've been covering those. Oh, you hear stories like this. Don't fall for this crap. The new budget's coming out. There's no way Iraq could pass the budget with the current exchange rate. Well, what the hell do you think they've been doing for the past 20 years? They've passed plenty of budgets, and they didn't have to change the exchange rate. Okay, people have been asking me about the currency baskets. So let me go ahead and do my best at explaining exactly what a currency basket is. Because in today's news, they touched on a little bit about Iraq expanding their currency basket. So Iraq expanding its currency basket can have both positive and negative effects on the dinar exchange rate. The positive effects of expanding the currency basket, this will allow them to attract more foreign investments and trade, which can lead to economic growth and job creation. This will lead to an increase in demand for the Iraqi dinar, which could strengthen its value against other currencies. Dealing with multiple currencies for Iraq will lead to diversifying its risk and reduce its dependency on any one currency. This can make the country's economy more resilient to external shocks and fluctuations in currency values. Expanding their currency baskets can provide Iraq with greater liquidity in the foreign exchange market, making it easier to buy and sell currencies. And that will lead to a more stable exchange rate and reduce the risk of currency fluctuations. But there is a downside to this kind of thing. If Iraq relies too heavily on foreign currencies, it may become vulnerable to fluctuations in their value. This can lead to a decrease in the value of the Iraqi dinar. And of course, this will also lead to an increase in the country's dependence on foreign currency. Dealing with multiple currencies, Iraq will lose some control over its monetary policy and exchange rate management. This could lead to exchange rate fluctuations as well as other economic instabilities. Now, there are different types of currency baskets, just so you're aware. The one they're talking about that Iraq's dealing with is a trade currency basket. It's a weighted average of a group of currencies that are used to determine the value of another currency. Currency baskets, of course, are a common tool that are used in international finance and trade. And they do this to manage exchange rate risk and to establish a benchmark for the value of a country's currency. And usually in these currency baskets, you'll see currencies that are major world currencies, like the US dollar, the euro, the yen, the British pound. So sure, being pegged to a currency basket can help stabilize the Iraqi dinar's exchange rate. Some countries who opt to peg their own currency to a specific currency basket rather than a single currency like the US dollar. This strategy can offer more stability and flexibility in managing their exchange rate policy while reducing dependency on any individual currency. Now, people were asking about whether or not we're pegged to the US dollar, and I was saying that they were no longer pegged to the US dollar. But then I was reading a BTI report, and in there they're saying they are still pegged to the dollar. Even though I did a video showing these articles, there's two of them, that said that they were no longer pegged to the US dollar. I read another article that said that they had switched to an adjusted peg. So what are the benefits if indeed Iraq is unpegged from the US dollar? This could give Iraq more control over its monetary policy and exchange rate, allowing Iraq to tailor its policies to its own economic conditions. Unpegging from the US dollar would give Iraq a flexible exchange rate. This would allow Iraq's goods and services to be more competitive in the global market because it has the potential of boosting exports and economic growth. Of course, without having to ask the US for crap all the time would be a big plus for them. I'm sure they're frustrated, especially when they asked for $1 billion recently and they were denied. So if they unpeg from the US dollar, they would have an independent monetary policy. Iraq could then better manage inflation and stabilize the economy. Unpegging from the US dollar could encourage diversification of Iraq's foreign exchange reserves. We know they've been adding a lot to their reserves recently. But more importantly, depegging from the US dollar would allow Iraq a more flexible exchange rate regime. This can signal to investors that Iraq is committed to economic reforms and stability. But there is a downside to this as well. As I explained earlier, if they unpeg from the US dollar, then they're dealing with the floating exchange rate, and this could lead to increased volatility, making it harder for businesses to plan. And the last thing you need is uncertainty when it comes to investors. Also, if Iraq has significant foreign currency denominated debt, unpegging from the US dollar could increase the burden of servicing that debt. And if for some reason the Iraqi dinar becomes a weaker currency after they depegged, that could lead to a higher import cost, potentially impacting the consumers and businesses. Not to mention, you got people like George Soros out there who would pay attention to something like this. And then you can have speculative attacks on the currency. That can occur, leading to a rapid depreciation in the currency and financial instability. This is where people like George Soros come in like sharks. Another issue is going through the whole process of transitioning to a new exchange rate regime. It could be disruptive and costly, short term anyways. So there are pros and cons from Iraq unpegging from the US dollar. The exchange rate is based on a number of factors, including the country's foreign exchange reserves, which they keep increasing, inflation rates, and economic indicators. So the Iraqi dinar can fluctuate significantly against the US dollar and other currencies due to the variety of economic and political factors. And that's why it's important for us to stay informed about current events and economic conditions in Iraq when we're talking about investing in their currency. So yes, that's a lot of information, and it's even more detailed than that. I'm just giving you a quick overview of a lot of these things, but also this is why a lot of times when I'm listening to videos or people make certain comments, you'll hear me then try to expand on what it is they're talking about. But even I'm guilty of that. I'll know there's more information, but it's so long and boring, like pretty much this video. It's just simpler to summarize it real quick and put it out there. But because of that, it does lead to a lot of misunderstandings and a lot of misinformation. And I think that's one of the things that Kyle really was trying to focus on, was not only are these people full of shit out there, but there are other things to take in consideration when we're talking about the value of the Iraqi dinar as well as their economy. Anyways, you guys, I hope this helps a little bit and you got a better understanding of what you're up against when it comes to the Iraqi dinar as well as Iraq and their economy. If you have any questions, leave them down below in the comments. I'll come through and check them later. So that's it for now, and I'll catch you later. I'm out.